Good evening, everyone.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is Change.org Twitter Spaces in collaboration with EduPlanner, a research organization working on issues around education. Change.org is one of the world's largest platform for social change. And Change.org Nigeria is hosting the space where we'll be talking about issues surrounding the ongoing ASU strike, which is in its seventh month. And we have speakers with us, student union leaders from three different universities. We have other speakers we have one of our moderator is the head of the Premium Times desk on investigation, but also the head of the Education Writers of Nigeria. We have the executive director of Enough is Enough. They will be joining us in this Twitter space. And we also have Omoyele Showore, who will also be joining us on this Twitter space. Omoyele Showore is a known student union activist and leader during his time as the student union leader for Unilag, and is also a presidential aspirant of AACN. He will be here with us, and we'll be hearing from the audience, and would also be tossing back to our speakers back and forth. But as a quick introduction, as more people are joining, I'm going to introduce my country director, the country director for Change.org Nigeria, Wale Ajiboye, who will be opening this conversation for us. We're going to be talking about some of the petitions that platform as this strike. This strike is the second longest strike in the history of all ASU strike in Nigeria. It's troubling, and but I will leave it to our speakers and I will leave it to our audience to give us some of the solutions into this current crisis. It's not new, but it's also time for us to look for solutions out of the education, some of the one of the problems plaguing the education sector. So Wale Ajiboye, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bukola. Thanks everyone for joining as well. I think that with the fact that we're having this conversation makes me really very sad. Sad because of all things that we struggle with, this shouldn't be one of them. Because the young people of Nigeria people say they are the future of the country, they are the future of tomorrow, but they're the leaders now. They're the leaders now. They are the future of Nigeria, but they're also the leaders now. And when I think about, like, when I started to think about what has been happening concerning this ASU strike, I feel a sense of shame even to discuss it with people, because I face the same thing. I think Buki mentioned there are two. This is the second longest. I think I faced the first one too, because I remember in the 93, when I was trying to get into university, we had to wait for a long time before we could even get in, and there was a lot of issues. And I think I had like 3 strikes. We had 3 different. At one point, I also probably had like 3 different ones before I finished a 5-year course in the university. And I can tell you that the impact on a lot of people, the impact on me, impact on a lot of people. Some people never recovered from it because it just, the age for even applying for jobs at that time was pegged at a certain time. So there has been many ripples about it, but I think we're now at a point where we need to find a solution to it. And I'm ashamed because when we think about the university system, which is meant to be the intellectual hub of the country, there is a problem there. And I think that it's not the idea really is not to blame anyone, not to blame the government, not to blame the university system, not to blame the student. It's just how do we solve it? And I think that this is a conversation that we want to have. How do we begin to think about the solutions that can help us move beyond this? Because where the world is going to, where the reality of the world is going to, Nigeria appears to be a place where the talents will come. Recently, Netflix recently launched a new scholarship to encourage students in West Africa, especially, to study movie making, to study TV production. And that implies something. there are people, the off-takers are really coming down to the country. Amazon Prime is also here. There are a lot of people that are looking for talented individuals, which we know they exist in Nigeria. This is not an argument about whether Nigeria is good or not. We can see the data tells everyone that Nigerians are really, really good and they are very smart. And so how can we have the best of our resources? The only sort of hope, because we have not leveraged our natural resources to help us move forward, to move this country forward. And if we have a lot of young people who are incredibly talented, they are incredibly talented, by the way. And when people say that Nigerians are lazy, I was like, no, don't say that, because you are not living in their context. And so the reality is that we do need to do something about this. And I think we need to leverage the voices of people who have solutions, people who have ideas on how we can move forward and find ways to end this, because we can't have another strike. We can't continue to have this. And we can't continue to pretend as if that people's opportunity are not being wasted every day that the strike is on. So this conversation really is just to invite people to share ideas, opportunities and how we can help as an organization in making sure that we resolve this issue. I'll leave it to our speakers to help us shape this conversation, but I'm here to answer any question that anyone may have concerning our work in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Buki. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Wale. I hear you when you say we can't have another strike. We can't have students out of school for nearly 7 months this year. And last year, due to COVID, and so also as a strike, students were out of school for at least more than 6 months. And it's troubling. It's something that we need to look into. I think the bone of the conversation here is, how do we not have another strike? It looks like something like a highfalutin idea, because since we've all known it, I went to a Nigerian university too, and I experienced strike even before I started my registration. So asking that, how long, when will it end, which is the theme of this Twitter space, seems like something that is unrealistic. But we are hoping that as speakers and our audience can also help us shed more light on this conversation. And like Wale said, our platform, Change.org platform, is also to sort of help shape conversation and get it to the attention of the right people. I'm also going to introduce Yomi Ogunwale, who is also the team lead for EduPlanner. EduPlanner, they've been doing a lot of research work around education in public universities in Nigeria. They are doing a lot of things around funding, a lot of things around access to education, funding, just looking at university autonomy, also even looking at issues beyond strike. They are working with a lot of young people across the country. And I would hand it over to Yomi Ogunwale to just tell us more of where they are thinking or what they are looking at as part of the solutions to the perennial, incessant strike action that happens in Nigerian universities. Yomi Ogunwale, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Buki. And my name is Yomi Ogunwale. I work with EduPlanner. And what we try to do is to see how we can sensitize citizens, sensitize Nigerians on how education works. Because one of those things that we discovered is most times when people want to talk about education, they just talk about how it's not working, how the lecturers are not getting paid, but they don't know the nitty-gritty. Not most of the time us talking about the challenges, which is what we are having again, that is causing this Twitter space to talk about ASU strike. But also for our citizens, for us to talk about the solutions. What is the way out? What are the new innovations we can bring into the education sector and see how it can work? It can work better over time. And that is what we try to do, try to look at data. What is the data saying? We bring out different ideas on how education can work. We look at education funding, we look at school facilities, we look at the education plan itself, which actually talks about the activities in the education sector. So that's like a brief on what we work around on to drive advocacy around the education sector. So when we talk about the topic for tonight, which is on ASU strike, I think like Wale said earlier, it's a sad scenario but we must also understand the background of what is causing all this. And that is where I think, personally for me, I feel like when it comes to people are very, very hard to manage. And that is what I'm seeing now with the current ongoing ASU strike. I feel, personally, I'm thinking maybe ASU is trying to make university management an election issue, which I think they've gone the wrong way towards. And why I say that is because there have been different solutions that have been proposed, which ASU has been hell-bent on not agreeing to so far. Parents have talked about them contributing 10,000 naira for them to see how they can raise fees for universities management. The federal government has actually proposed some deals. Even if those deals are not feasible, at least for the sake of the students, this should be considered, and we should look at how do we end this ongoing strike. And there's also been the big issue of universities' autonomy, which ASU has also kicked against. So it begs the question, what is ASU's goal at this time? And I think, personally, looking at the issue for over 190 days now, you begin to ask yourself, what are we really even fighting for this time around? There has been several meetings, lots of meetings, and nothing has come out of them. So maybe we as citizens, as we gather in this space tonight, we can all come up with new solutions on how we can address this issue. Because one thing we must also not forget is, when we look at the trend in ASU strike now, it happens like every 2 years. Every 2 years, we hear about another strike. So we need to look at how do we buckle the trend and see that we don't come back, even with the call of this strike, we don't come back again to have another discussion on ASU strike. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yomi. I mean, you've given us food for thought. You've talked about parents saying, do we need to contribute money to ensure that our children go back to school? University autonomy is another question. There are so many headlines that have come up today just around ASU strike. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of unease, not just on the side of students right now, also on the side of parents. But again, I'm going to hand over to our moderator. That's Mojeed Alabi. Mojeed Alabi is the head of investigations for Premium Times and is also the head of Education Writers Association of Nigeria. Is very well on top of this situation, covering these stories out of ASU meetings and meetings with the federal government. He will be taking us through the spaces today. And yes, Mojeed, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Buki. Thank you so much, everyone. I think this is quite interesting. And I welcome on board our guest speakers for today. Here we have my brother, my very big egbon, my comrade, also here, Omoyele Sowore, the presidential the presidential candidate of AAC. I will be happy to have a brother at the ASU Rock. So thank you so much. We wish you the very best of luck. Also here with us is our home madam in the house, that's Yemi Adamolekun, who has been doing so much with enough is enough as an NGO, as a civil society. Thank you so much for your activities. You have always been there with us. We know we had you some times ago. So my assignment is very simple. My assignment is to be able to at least guide this particular platform to be able to moderate. It's a big assignment for me because the people who are here are big brothers and big sisters. But we are going to give it a structure. What structure are we following? In the next 40 to 45 minutes, we are going to engage these guest speakers. And after that, there will be moment for audience to also get to engage them, to ask questions directly on what way forward. Many of them have actually been engaging the public through their Twitter handle and other platforms to be able to speak on this particular matter. But we want to bring them here so that there could be some form of coordination and for the public to also have a kind of a direction in what way they are bringing up. We have been involved in discussions around ASU strike since February 14th, when it actually started at the University of Lagos. But we feel that the same way we had this conversation in 2020, when they had a prolonged strike like this. It has always been there. It was there when Omoyele Sowore was president of student union at the University of Lagos. It has always been there. So the conversation has continued. So I will begin with the former president of the student union of the University of Lagos, Omoyele Sowore. Sowore has also sponsored a petition through this platform asking the president of the country to end ASU strike and accede to the request of these Nigerian lecturers. Mr. Omoyele Sowore, are you here with us?
Yes, I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Very clear, sir. Very, very clear. Thank you so much for coming on ground, for coming on board. Now, let me direct this question to you. It's been on. You are sponsored a petition. People have protested. NLC has staged protest. Civil societies have joined. I could see that even the likes of Action Aid Nigeria joined, staging massive protest on the streets of Nigeria, calling for the resolution. But yet, here we are, 7 months into this strike. Do you think there is an end in sight? And what is your suggestion?
I don't think the government is interested in ending the strike. This is one strike, like several others, where it appears that the government has enjoyed the strike itself and has done everything to provoke everyone who's involved in the strike to ensure that the strike doesn't end. And where the provocation hasn't done very well, they mock them. When you see a government that's interested in solving a problem or finding a solution to a problem like this, you can tell by the quality of negotiators with ASU in ending the problem. The people who are talking to ASU are simply people who don't believe in ASU. One of them, Junior Minister Festus Keyamo, said publicly that students should tell their parents to go and kneel down and beg ASU to call out the strike. It shows clearly that either he has little regard for the gravity of issues that led to the strike, or they just have zero understanding or interest in solving this kind of a problem. So I don't see this ASU strike going away. Sometimes you ask people who are knowledgeable about negotiations going on. I have some well-respected former professors who are on the team, and they will tell you that this looks like something the government is enjoying. And this is, we're into the 7th month of this strike. It started like a joke, and now it has become almost permanent. How do you kick students out? I mean, let students be out of classrooms for half of a year. And we are still discussing, as of today, whether this is going to be addressed or not. Clearly, this is one of the longest strikes, ASU strikes that's happened in Nigeria, as these perennial strikes have been happening. So I don't know what else you need to show you that government doesn't want this to end. I don't see it ending, except of course students themselves.
But before you go, sir,
come out. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry for cutting you short. This is at a stage in Nigeria. We had a kind of a system that actually worked perfectly. What I could say perfectly in terms of the kind of the students being begged, the kind of the system we ran. At what stage do you think Nigeria got it wrong? Where we started having this incessant strike, this shutdown of the university system. At what stage do you think Nigeria got it wrong?
Well, Nigeria got it wrong from the beginning, from 1960. But it only got worse over time. And when I say got worse, Nigeria just kept going down the valley. And I've not seen Nigeria in my lifetime, which I've been consciously around now since 1980 when I started secondary school. And I think Nigeria has been going down. Things have been worse than they were in 1980 in the educational sector. In 1980, I started my Form 1 with books, erasers, pen, pencils given to me free. In 2022, universities are shut down. In 1980, I heard of our brothers and sisters who were attending university, whose bed were made by staff of the university taking care of students. They used to eat chicken and ask people to come and eat on campuses because they had very fantastic cafeterias where they were well fed. They had great libraries. You can ask your parents if there's anyone who went to university in Nigeria in those times. But they started attacking the education system around 1978, which led to the Ali Must Go riot that is well known now. Interestingly, it was Olusegun Obasanjo, who now wants to choose another president for you, that started that attack on the educational sector. And the person who was his commissioner of education at that time was one man known as Ali. And that was why it was called Ali Must Go. And Ali eventually, between, I think, in the 1999, between 1999 and 2007, so became a major practitioner or participant in the political system in Nigeria. He was the chairman of the PDP, also under Obasanjo's regime. So it has just gotten worse. But I would say that the military made it even worse. There was a time that a retired military officer was made the vice chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University because lecturers disagreed with the federal government on educational matters. But it's gotten worse over time. But I think this is probably one of the worst times for education in this country, because you look at this is deliberate attack on university and tertiary education or institutions, or the institutions that make education possible at the tertiary level. And this level of negligence, this level of disdain for this particular strike shows that we don't have people in political office or at the highest level who understand the value of education. That is very sad. But let me say one last thing. What hasn't happened? We talked about Labour Congress going on strike. I want to see students themselves, because right now they will be coming to Abuja for their NANS convention. They are doing the convention at the time they're out of school. I want to see students themselves take over the streets. Let's see if NANS declares, a total shutdown of the Nigerian nation, if this strike would not be called off even before the protest is going to take place.
Yeah.
NANS has done that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. We seem to have lost you. Probably the network challenge. But thank you so much for your intervention. Can you hear me, please? If I'm being heard, somebody should just give me a sign, please.
I can hear you. I think I lost you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Yemi is also here from Enough is Enough. We are going to also recognize her. Please, if we have Unilag Olodo here, what that means, I don't know, and I don't want to know. So please, if we have such here, because we have a former president of Unilag Student Union here, so what is meant by Unilag Olodo, I don't want to know. If you are here, please kindly indicate, request mic, and you will be given mic. So I know Yemi has been very much involved in terms of conversations around ASU strike and other university workers union strike. And she has actually posted something very recently, and that is about the university autonomy and why the union ASU itself should be left to also mobilize in terms of resources. So could you please clarify this particular post of yours recently, Yemi?
Hi, good evening. Sorry, I missed that. Which post? Sorry.
Can you please comment? Yeah, thank you.
Which post are you talking about?
I mean, I can take that, Majid. I was just, we were reading one of your tweets in preparation for this Twitter space. And I saw that you said that ASU needs to compete for resources and students as part of a solution to this ongoing crisis. And we just wanted to know how does this solve the problem? And I also know that you also said government needs to stop managing universities and tertiary institutions in Nigeria because they are not doing a great job of that. Can you just tell us more about that?
Right. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining the spaces. And thank you to change.org for the invitation. I mean, for me, so my upfront bias, I'm a campus child. Both my parents were academics. So I grew up on the campus of a university. And well, I attended one partially. So that's partly where I come from when I approach the conversation around ASU and ASU strike. I do not think the Nigerian government, so the constitution says, which is what ASU uses a lot, that the federal government will provide free education. The clause that they always forget to mention conveniently is if it has the resources to do so. We can argue about the fact that if Nigeria is rich or not rich, but our P&L showing that we're in debt shows us that we don't have money. The fact that we have wasted the money, we have stolen the money, we have spent the money, we are still stealing the money is not the issue. The point is that we don't have it. Now, unfortunately, based on our choices, we've continued to elect leaders that, as Yele has rightly summarized, have not prioritized education. And it's also understandable. You can't have a military regime that wants its intellectual base to continue to be populated by people who can challenge its authority. You're raising people with ideas who want to have a conversation in a system of administration that doesn't tolerate dissent. So it kind of makes sense that both under a military regime, the civil service and Nigeria's educational system have been systematically destroyed. And that's where we are now. It didn't happen overnight. Wale talked about it while he was in school. Yele has talked about it from when he was in school. So where we are now didn't happen overnight. But we're here now, and we're still trying to solve the problem with the same tactics, which is what my problem with ASU is. You've been doing these strikes for 30 years. What exactly has changed? You do a strike, they give you part of your money, they say they'll review it, everybody goes back to school. And then 6 months later, we shut the university systems down again. And then my challenge with ASU taking that tactic to trying to solve this problem is the fact that universities are meant to be a country's intellectual base. This is a nation's intelligentsia, and you're using the same methods and expecting the different results, which is what people call the definition of insanity. So if your intellectuals, quote unquote, are behaving in a way that's defined by intellectuals as insanity, is that not a problem? And so we're here and we're still doing the same thing. So in my tweet that you refer to, it's simply that ASU's tactic hasn't worked and they haven't changed tactic. That's number one problem. Number two, as far as I know, I've never seen ASU make the funding of tertiary education an election issue. So when it comes to elections, ASU goes home to sleep. Nobody is challenging governors, legislators, the president on what do you plan to do around tertiary education and holding them responsible for it. And as Yele also said, more importantly, now ASU goes on strike, but quite a number of them are moonlighting at private universities. So even though they are not getting paid, poverty is obviously not a problem because they have other sources of income. But students whose lives are getting shortened, literally, are the ones that have the most to lose, and their parents. And there was a period, I had said that before, then there was a period that students got on the streets and there was a lot of protests in different parts of the country. But I quite agree with Yele's point. They shut down Abuja for a few days, maybe a few people would wake up. A sitting minister of state is telling students to grovel and beg. So I say all this just to say that the communication and the narrative doesn't, both on the part of ASU, on the part of students, and on the part of us as citizens, really, doesn't give the weight to the problem that we have. So I land by saying that Nigerian government doesn't have money. Yes, we've wasted it and we've stolen it, but we don't have money is the real issue. Tertiary education should not really be the priority of government. The federal government or the government system, let me not say federal government, because local government is primary, state is secondary. The government should focus on funding primary and secondary education well. So we actually even if you're a secondary school graduate, you actually know that you went to school and you can actually string a sentence together and write something. And then tertiary education should, in a sense, I mean, people like the word privatize, but universities should be left to be autonomous, i.e., source for their own funding from different means. You can get alumni to donate money. Harvard has, I forget how many millions of naira that Harvard has as an endowment from alumni. IFE is where I grew up, and the roster of IFE graduates reads as a who is who of Nigeria today. They can fund different things. But that's not to say that the federal government shouldn't give money. The federal government can then, in whatever way, whatever percentage of our budget we're giving to tertiary education, give it in two ways. One, as bursaries to students who might not be able to afford fees. And secondly, as infrastructure support for the university. So every year you get a certain amount. And then the universities become competitive. The first generation universities are not the same as third or fourth generation universities. And there's a reason why. Because at a certain point in time when universities could actually be classified, there was the caliber of their outputs, the caliber of the professors that are taught there made a difference. The universities cannot all be equal. And lastly, our government has turned universities into constituency projects. It's like you get a university, everybody gets a university, which is utter nonsense. Every state does not need a university. We can't afford it. So you have universities that you haven't funded, yet you are setting up universities all across the country because you want, quote unquote, every state to have one, which doesn't really make any sense. So again, empower the universities to decide. Not every university needs a faculty of law. Not every university needs a faculty of medicine. So let's figure out which ones are best suited for medicine or law or geography, or whatever it is, and begin to specialize. So when you're applying for university, you say, okay, I want to go to Ibadan because they have a really good faculty of medicine, or I want to go to ABU. But if I want to do law, I'll go to Abuja or go to University of Port Harcourt, whatever it is. So that's what I mean by competing for students, because students are then choosing where they want to go based on their JAMB results or the quality of professors, or if I want to go to the north or the south. That then becomes what we are talking about, not the fact that we are sitting home for 7 months. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Remi, for this your detailed analysis, your detailed contribution. I know I'm going to come to my brother, who, whether he's going to take this kind of piece of advice from Yemi in his as a candidate of a political party if he eventually becomes the president. But before then, let me also introduce Ibrahim Salau, with the handle Unilag Golodo for. Welcome on board. Thank you for joining us. While welcoming you, do you support the view just shared? Before I come to Omoyele Sowore, do you support the view just shared by Yemi? Do you think that the university, I know some of them are not new. We have specialized universities. We have University of Agriculture. We have Medical University. We have some of them who actually do not even run some courses. As of today, OAU does not have mass communication as a department. So do you support the view shared by Yemi? Ibrahim Salau.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. So from what you just said, I think it makes sense, especially having the schools fund themselves, look for ways to fund themselves, and have specialized universities. Because one of the major thing with the strike and ASUAN government over the years is funding, revitalizing education sector and all those things. And I think schools, education and everything, basically, even though it's government funded for now, we should be looked at as a business. Let's each institution be responsible for how they provide for themselves. And that way we have more teams and staff who actually care about the growth of these institutions and find ways to make it work. Because the way it is right now, there's so much being destroyed, keeping students at home. Education being an important determinant of the level of progress of a nation and the quality of life of its citizens. Keeping them the education stored and people are becoming more apathetic regarding education. The less we are educated as a nation, the less we're able to help ourselves and our families and all that. So I don't know. I just believe that we need to find ways. We need to look at these things from different angles and see how to make this work. The government should actually be put. I still believe though that the government should be put under a lot of pressure to find lasting solutions to these problems. And the ASU staff, the ASU heads should be actively involved in sensitizing students during elections to help them examine their choice candidates for those who have good plans for the nation's education. This way, we will at least have leaders who value education and will be willing to sit down and work hand in hand with these people to make sure everything is going well. Yeah.
Thank you, Ibrahim, for that. Really welcome.
Okay.
Majid, are you still on?
Yeah, thank you so much. I was just about, I didn't know that I didn't unmute. Thank you, Ibrahim, for your intervention. But I think we are placing so much, we seem to be placing so much at the doorstep of ASU or even the university community. We seem to have forgotten that the universities have also become a kind of a political, have been so much politicized that before you can become even HOD, you must play politics of ethnic cards, you must play some level of religious cards. But we are not going to that. So if you want politicians, if you want professors to also be involved in the politics of the larger society, it becomes a major challenge, because part of the challenges facing Nigerian universities are involved the politicization of education in Nigeria. But I'm coming back to Omoyele Sowore, who I know may want to run a kind of a Marxist system of government. Yemi has said that institutions should try as much as possible, probably in terms of fundraising and things like that. Do you welcome this idea? Do you think Nigerian universities should be made to raise funds for themselves, especially when you look at the kind of the waste that we run as a government, especially with bicameral legislature, having so much in terms of ministries, agencies, and department of government? Do you welcome institutions raising funds among the already overtaxed people?
No, I do not agree that universities should be saddled with fundraising to the point that they will turn the universities to private institutions for persons who do not the most amount of money. We know Nigeria very well, but education is way too important to be left in the hands of fundraisers and grant makers. Yes, it could be one of the ways to make the universities raise money for themselves through alumni, several other fundraising activities, but the core of the funding of universities should still be borne by government. Education is way too important and we don't have enough of it. You know, there are only about 1.6 million students in Nigeria, in a country that has over 200 million people. That is an awful percentage of young people in higher institutions. And if you actually want Nigeria to be built out of this doldrum that has been put by, its leaders, part of the things you must do is fund education and ensure that you raise the bar. You see, the refusal of Nigerian leaders over the years to fund education points to one thing. They also politically need citizens that can be managed the way they are managing Nigeria today. I guarantee you, had Nigeria had more graduates than we have now, I don't think it will be easy for some of the candidates that we will have now to have, decided that they will run for office. Let me just tell you, just as we are sitting here and having this conversation, the Nigerian government just released over $263 million to airlines, another $35 million to airlines, so that they can get money out of Nigeria for their own private business. It's a private endeavor. It's not. You cannot tell me that airlines that are handling maybe about 80,000 passengers a year, in a month maybe, should be prioritized over universities that has over 1.6 million students, upon whose shoulders the future of this country should be sitting. This is what I'm talking about, priorities, and we should not reduce the conversation, honestly, to just say, well, maybe ASU be a part of this blame. They've been blaming ASU for strikes forever. But why is there nobody blaming a governor who went to London on a private jet? I just watched 3 governors land on Vista Jet a few hours ago. That's the governor of Rivers State, that of Abia State, and that of Benue State. The one in Rivers, the one in Abia, the state university in his state has had a lot of courses disaccredited because he couldn't provide even $20,000 for the university as grant. I mean, I'm as funding, proper fund. I won't say 20,000, but the jets that they came on, I went and did a quick search. Vista jet from London to Nigeria is $20,000 per hour. They are flying for 6 hours or 7 hours to land in Nigeria. They will also pay some taxes on top of that. They have been in London. I'm sure they are not staying in hotels that are less than £4,000 to £5,000 per night. We're talking about Nigerian governors. They will pay themselves allowances, unconscionable allowances. These are individuals. And if you put together 100,000 funding for that university in Abia State, for instance, things will work there. So we can't just be blamed. We have to prioritize education. We have to get our priorities right. We can't keep letting our leaders get away with blue murder when it comes to funding education or funding the right sectors of our society that can, improve the quality of life. So I don't think it should be ASU's problem. If we're in a society where, yes, we have people who are very successful and they can give back to their universities, fine. But I also know that even in the US, that we talk a lot about, the US government gives a lot of money to even private universities because they just can't afford for universities to be on their own. They bail out universities the same way, of course, they might bail out airlines, they might bail out private institutions. But in Nigeria, these guys are not interested in education, and we can't be telling ourselves that, well, if you blame ASU enough, maybe they'll call up. We can shame them out of the strike, but you can't shame the university out of decadence. The last thing I would say, which I agree with Yemi on, is that maybe ASU was strategic in putting their strike in 2022. Whether we like it or not, it's starting to become an election issue. And if it continues, it will become more serious electoral issue for Nigeria, where candidates will be forced to speak on what they will do. They're already asking us, just as we are discussing tonight, about what we'll do about ASU. But most of the candidates who call themselves frontline candidates don't talk about these issues because they don't even talk to Nigerian people.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for yielding the grant. This is becoming interesting. We are now having some kind of contributions that seem to be looking at what way forward. And one of them is that we should make it a kind of an election issue come 2023. 2023 is almost here. Now, we have had protests, we have had petitions, we have had dialogue, we have had conversations around this issue for the past 7 months. No solution in sight. What more do you think can be done to ensure that we have quality university education, to have the lecturers back? Thank you, Yemi. You can come on.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Yeli that ultimately, if you're talking about development, it is government's responsibility to prioritize education, be it primary, secondary, or tertiary. And tertiary is critical in terms of research, innovation, yada, yada, yada. But I think one thing is quite clear that we've established is that given the history of the federal government's approach to tertiary education, that is not interested in developing that sector. And from ASU's perspective, the students' perspective, the parents' perspective, and the citizens' perspective, we have not forced government to prioritize that sector. So when I say that an easy way, when I said government should free ASU in a sense, yes, it might seem like government is getting out of it, but literally, honestly, it actually then forces ASU to think and forces us. So by government taking that action, I don't see it as releasing them from funding, even though we can say that in practical terms, from funding tertiary education, but it's actually allowing us as the stakeholders to take control of tertiary education. Universities in Nigeria can't charge fees. Universities in Nigeria, the ability to raise money, get money is limited based on the structure of the ownership of the universities, yada, yada, yada. And so when I say that government should free ASU and free the universities, that's what I literally mean. Free them to be able to do what they can do that's not encumbered by the federal government. It's the federal government that will appoint your chancellor. And as we've politicized everything and politicized government, because they're appointments. So your vice chancellor is an appointment, your chancellor is an appointment, your board of whatever is a council or whatever they call that, the governing council, they're all appointments. They're appointments that are lobbied for. They're appointments that are not functioning the way they should, because in the nature of appointments in Nigeria's government bureaucracy, because the government owns the university, they can do and undo. So when your priority is not getting the best out of the university, you appoint useless people and get useless results. So it's either, and unfortunately, again, completely agree with Yele, to the degree that even as citizens, we are just getting to the point where citizens are using their voice and owning the agency they have as people who elect these people into office and then can make demands. But we're not there yet. The 20,000, the ones that jetted to London or jet to Dubai to go and have meetings, they're not using their personal funds. They're using our funds. I'm sure some of us saw the video that went viral. Ben Ayade standing in a church and very confidently talking about donating 25 million and then telling the bishop he's going to see him later. And the bishop telling him, whatever you want to give me, package it and use it to pay salaries. So when you have governments that are unashamed about standing in churches, standing at functions and publicly pledging 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 25 million, when they owe salaries and we all clap, we're all collectively guilty. So in the sense that we have not been able to get ourselves for the situation that we're in to force government to do right, then if government thinks it is taking itself, what's the word I'm looking for, getting an out, an easy out by freeing ASU, it then gives us an opportunity to shape the university system in a way that it benefits Nigerians. And that's the truth of the matter. And to Yele's point about the aviation sector, slightly not similar, because they're not bailing out the aviation sector. People paid for tickets. Their tickets are in Naira. And Emirates and the rest of them are saying, I cannot spend Naira in Dubai. I need dollars. And so the dollars that they're releasing to the aviation sector is not free money in a sense. It's basically they've converted Naira to dollars so that the airlines can take their money back to their countries where their operations are based. And I think that's a slightly different, a slightly different paradigm. And sorry, one last point before I leave. Bailing out universities, which as you said is done in the US, is one thing. Funding universities is a separate conversation entirely. Most of the universities in the US are private entities. There are some that are subsidized by the state, and that affects how much students pay to go there. So if you go to a state university in the US, how much you pay is less than if you go to a private university like the Harvards and the Yales and Stanfords of this world. So I think we really need to be clear about what ultimately it is that we want. If we want to continue this face-off with government, with a population that's just finding its voice in holding government accountable for an issue that we've never made an election issue, we are the ones that's going to be on the losing end. Because I'll rest for now.
Thank you so much, Yemi. Here we are. I think it is becoming something of Yemi, Yele, and Yomi. So thank you so much for your intervention, for your contributions. We also have president of student unions, Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, and also University of Ilorin also here. Oluwaseyale and Waliu Taufik, they are also here. But let me go to, there have been some kind of, what I would say, some kind of concerns raised around Nigerian university leaders, Nigerian university student leaders not really doing enough at the moment. Particularly, we have seen some of them who are acting as appendages of government in power. It is becoming something very frightening, something very disheartening that at a time when you expect students to take action, some of them are visiting politicians and raising politicians and help for electoral opportunities, for election opportunities. So, Oluwaseyale, you are the president of the Student Union of Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, where you have a national leader, the national treasurer of ASU, one of your lecturers. So do you think Nigerian students are doing enough to ensure that these strikes by University Workers Union are ended and to ensure that we do not have recurrence? Oluwaseyi.
Good evening, everyone. I first of all want to thank the call for organizing this. So quickly, let me go to answer the question you have. So number one, I'll actually say that students are not, maybe student leaders are not doing enough to end this strike. Yes, one, because it's not just going to be a simple thing. So for me, I believe in process, but I believe in actually a planned process or something. And when you look at it again or something, we have associations that are actually in charge of student body in Nigeria, such as National Association of Nigerian Students and National Association of University Students or something. So I would say that we do not have, okay, the same thing is happening in Nigeria. So the same way we do not have good leaders in Nigeria, the same way we also do not have good student leaders too. So as you said right here, most of our student leaders nowadays, they are politicians themselves, or maybe I'll say like interning politicians. So you can't actually go against your master. So yeah, we saw this. I think last 3 months when there was actually like different protests or something. So we had this kind of council of student union leaders in Nigeria, and we're supposed to actually like plan a protest or something, but unfortunately, some of our people who are interning politicians actually like sabotage this effort, and so that is just it or something. And another thing is just that the kind of government we have nowadays is the kind of government that you have to be very, very careful, especially taken to the street or something. I don't think it's actually the joy of any parent to see his or her child being shot by a government now. So we also what happened at Lekki in 2020. We also what has been happening in Nigeria or something. So I think what every student leader wants to do is just to graduate. For example, I have just 3 months to go in school, and my joy is actually to leave the school for and start talking. So that is also the same thing for every student leader nowadays. So after it's fighting, student leaders are fighting, students are fighting or something. But for me, I think we just have a government that is not ready to listen. So I think I will just start that for now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Oluwaseyi. Something that I've taken very clearly from you is that student leaders today are more interested in graduating from institutions rather than seeking way and solutions to the problem. And I'm very much sure Omoyele Sowore will not be happy hearing this. We have had student leaders at a time when we had Ali Must Go. We have had the tenor, the regime of the likes of Olusegun Mayegun. We have had that of people like Rockway Winler and co. We had Omoyele Sowore leading students to raise conscience, and we have seen the video all over, particularly in 1992-93, when there was this MKO crisis, the annulment of June 12, raising the concern that even if you graduate, where do you go from there? We have had opportunity. I myself, I was suspended from Obafemi Awolowo University for 4 academic semesters, not because I stole, not because I cheated in examination, or not because of committing any crime, but because of standing for what is right, particularly in the interest of the students. But now that we have Nigerian student leaders who actually want to graduate and are not interested in fighting the cause, just as you have put it, Waliu Taufik, the president of the University of Ilorin Student Union, that's a place where they say students don't even protest. Do you agree with your colleague from FUNAB? Mr. Omoyele Sowore, please, we have offered you microphone. Kindly accept. We have, so because you are still here, and we need to have you coming in on this kind of issue. So, Waliu Taufik, do you agree with Oluwaseyi?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity once again. And I would say that I largely agree with my friend. When the head is faulty, there is no way the entire body can be all right. As he said, we have a national body that represents our interests. And when the strike started in February, we looked up to the national body until April. We did not see anything. It was a little bit critical for University of Ilorin because we were not part of ASU. We were not part of, so it was a little bit new to us. The struggle was new to us. So when we saw the strike, we were surprised. But then after April, Student Union University of Ilorin, we started planning a protest in Ilorin, Kwara State. And at the same time, University of Benin was planning a protest too. UI also did a protest at Obafemi Awolowo University. While we were planning the protest, we were faced with challenges from the state government, from the police officers, that we want to, frustrate the security apparatus of the state. But we were steadfast. We made them realize that we'll be accountable for anything that happens, and we organized the protest in Ilorin. At the same time, I could recollect that we had about 3 to 4 universities organize the same protest in their respective states. After that time, we also had National Association of Nigerian Students organized some sort of a protest in Abuja, which was a little bit, not effective because of low turnout. But then at the long run, after that time, we saw them meet the Minister for Education, had some outbursts that were not favorable, there were not true representation of the student populace, and that is to show that the head is not correct. So even though we at the state level in our respective states are making efforts. Last week we had a press conference in Ilorin, Kwara State, to talk about ASU, to plead with the state government, to plead with the federal government and their respective ministers to ensure that we can, call off the strike as soon as possible. But then all this ranting of SUG presidents in their respective institutions, in their respective states, we not hold weight unless and until the National Association of Nigerian Students leadership, take the bull by its horns. And I can tell you for free that most of the Student Union presidents across Nigeria are on their way to Abuja. In fact, I'm inside Abuja at the moment, because tomorrow we are set to elect a credible and accountable and a focused leader or leadership of NANS that can, solve the problem and the issues we are having in the Nigerian.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Waliu Taufeeq. You can mute your mic, please.
All right,
You
thank
can
you very
mute your
much.
mic, please. You can mute your mic, please. Kindly mute your mic. Waliu Taufeeq,
All right,
please mute your mic.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so Omoyele Sowore, you have had these positions by these student leaders. Are you proud of what you left behind as a legacy? Omoyele Sowore, can you hear me?
I've not heard anything in the last 10 minutes, so I don't know
Okay.
what was your question. Sorry.
The question is very simple. We have had the student union president of FUNAB and Uni-Ilorin talking about the leadership crisis, talking about their challenge to hold government accountable, their interest to just graduate and move away from the institution. Like the University of FUNAB president said, that he only has about 3 months, and that no parents will be very happy to see his or her child being shot down, particularly following what happened at the EndSARS, during EndSARS crisis. And I'm saying that as a former student union president, one who actively participated in national protests, one who mobilized and organized national protests, we also had the likes of Olusegun Mayegun, we had the likes of Rockwell Winla. Are you proud of what is left behind for the student union movement in Nigeria?
I would say, with respect to
Just in 2
student
minutes,
unionism in Nigeria, yeah, it's a very sad place to discuss. I mean, sad issue to discuss. I mean, a sad place when I'm student activism, and I'm not blaming the guys who are here or who are not here. This is part of what the military did and the subsequent civilian regime. They made sure
not
that
to be audible. I think we seem to be having issues with Omoyele Sowore. Probably your network is a bit bad.
You are audible now. Maybe you can go again.
Yeah, network has been spotty. Oh shit! Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, sir.
All right. So, with regards to student unionism, I maybe in the future, because that's not something I'm happy to discuss on a regular basis. I met with some student leaders last night from Obafemi Awolowo University, and I was telling them that, and I posted this on my, I think it was posted on Twitter or Facebook this morning, that even those who are considered this in Nigeria today, as student union president in our time, you have to have a manifesto, which most of them have. You have to motivate students. You sell rallies where you speak directly to students and explain what you are bringing on board to them. But today, student union leaders are only interested in becoming the kind of oppressors that have destroyed even their university system. So they are more interested in vanity license plates, big cars, and being seen with governors and government officials. In my own time, it's almost a crime to be seen with a government official shaking hands or attending to public officials who have not contributed anything to the development of education. But the reverse is the case today. And I hope that, like that student union president spoke that I heard before you called me on, that they will elect credible and accountable leaders tomorrow in Abuja. I hope that will be the case so that NANS can get back on the front burners of not only educational issues that are affecting students, but welfare issues, even democratic issues, and the well-being of Nigerian people, because this is what NANS used to be about. It is our own NANS that delivered democracy to Nigeria in 1999. Young people like us. It was young people that delivered independence to Nigeria in 1960. They were students. They met in London, and they kept organizing against the colonialists before Nigeria became independent. But today, what we hear is very, very sad, I must say. And I'm hoping that, new leaders, young, vibrant leaders of students will emerge who are not afraid of the oppressive system in place. I don't want to comment on what FUNAB president said, that he wants to graduate in 3 months. If you graduate in 3 months and the society is like this, where are you graduating into? The people that went to private universities or traveled to Ghana, they are probably still going to graduate before you in 3 months. So fight for the rights of others, fight for your own rights, and fight for a better country, and you'll be a happy person in the future. And I hope most of you will start doing that, which is right. I yield.
Thank you so much. We will soon be coming to the audience in the next couple of minutes. I will soon hand over the mic to Buki to continue this conversation. But before then, we have just about 4 or 5 minutes for us to really engage some of our guest speakers more. Ibrahim, is he still here? Ibrahim is no longer here, but we have Yemi here. You understand very clearly the challenges facing Nigeria. That's Yemi, I'm addressing you now. You understand the problem with our university system. You lived in a university, and one of the best, that used to be one of the best around at the time. Now that we do not have that education, the quality education as we used to have, now that the system seems to be in trouble. I don't know whether you saw the NEET assessment report that was delivered in 2013. You had a situation where Nigerian students are using kerosene stoves in replacement of Bunsen burners. You have classrooms already overcrowded. Yet this government has continued to mobilize some kind of resources to establish new universities instead of expanding the existing one. Like, for instance, OAU is sitting on about 13,000 hectares of land. Unilorin is sitting on about 16,000 hectares of land. Rather than developing those institutions, what we have seen is establishing a University of Medical Sciences in Ela, probably to support the pioneer chairmanship of APC, that's Chief Bisi Akante. And it is the same thing all over the places. Apart from strike action, I'm talking to Yemi now. What other option do you think our Nigerian university workers have to ensure that the system is corrected? Thank you, Yemi.
Honestly, I mean, as I said before, I really believe that if academic staff union of university want to reclaim their space as the country's thinking think tank, so to speak, like thinking brain, then they should position themselves to reclaim their universities. So instead of sitting and negotiating with government how much government owes them or doesn't owe them, as the case may be, and saying that we will not teach until you pay us, and those ones are saying, well, we don't have money, so we're not going to pay you, is to say, you know what, we are going to charge money. Give us the freedom to run this university. So let their negotiating be different. And I say that a bit I'm a bit hesitant in saying that because the federal government does owe them money. So the point then is, do you push the government to a standstill until it pays you money or pays you part of the money, which is what it normally does, and then you decide on your own that, look, if we get X amount of money, after we get it, then we're going to say, basically, since you cannot run us, we're going to run ourselves, kind of narrative. I mean, there's an article about another union that came up. I forget what they are called.
It's called Congress of Nigerian University Academics. That is CONOA. And CONOA has also listed other alternatives to strike.
Yeah, but CONOA hasn't listed, it's listed alternatives to strike, but hasn't listed alternatives to solving the problem. Because strike is not the problem. The problem is the fact that universities are underfunded and the universities are politicized. And as you rightly said, we're creating more universities and we're claiming we don't have money to fund the ones we already have. So CONOA, I mean, when I read their statement the other day, and Kayamo said, yeah, we have not, what may call it? Recognize them. So we're not, so we're not held responsible for breaking up ASU. I thought it was so stupid. Because you are saying you are not held responsible for breaking up ASU. ASU is a union. If another union wants to come up, what's your business in who, what, and how they come up? You are, in a sense, a regulator. Recognize them, let them keep it moving, and let's have a separate conversation if need be. So I think for me, that's where the challenge is, that recognizing that the university does owe money. But so let's take that, for example. Elections are next year. This is an APC government. This is not by any chance to say that APC is the reason why we're here. Successive governments, as Yele pointed out, has brought us to where we are. Unfortunately, APC is the one right now that's not solving the problem. How do we make this conversation about APC's incompetence as it relates to tertiary education? Because the point is the president, and the president doesn't care. Bubu doesn't send. Did Bubu go to university? Bubu did not go to university. Bubu doesn't understand. And Bubu doesn't really care. Insecurity is Bubu doesn't care about. Your economy, Bubu doesn't care. So how much more some elite children going to university? He doesn't care. Our legislators are on holiday and they've given Bubu 6 weeks, which I think has passed, or they were going to impeach him, but they're still chilling. Our governors, as Yele has said, have traveled and are meeting in the abroad because there's no way for them to meet in Nigeria. London is where they needed to meet. And people are owed salaries. So our political class keeps showing us that they really don't care. How do we turn this into energy of having meaningful conversations about elections? I don't hear ASU talking about that. Yele has laid the groundwork for the current level of student leaders that we have. Unfortunately, they're a reflection of society. And then there are the rest of us. And there are people on this line who are entrepreneurs, who own businesses. Let's be clear. Innovation, development, research, and all of that come from our universities. All of us pay for it indirectly. So it's not just an ASU student conversation. All of us pay for it indirectly with universities being on strike. So one, I think we need to amplify how much this is an election conversation, not just from ASU, but also from us as citizens, in asking legislators, asking state governors, and asking whoever wants to be president, as Yele said, what are you going to do about tertiary education? And having a conversation about it. For ASU, are they rethinking how they want to negotiate? Can we, if we're going to if the government is not going to give us all the money we're asking for, what are we ready to do in terms of taking back tertiary education? You are complaining that they're not funding you, but if they set up a university in Taraba and there are no resources, you are the same one that will leave Ife and go and be moonlighting in Taraba. What kind of messaging is that sending? And so Ultimately, we just need to be honest about what it is that we want and what we're willing to sacrifice to get it.
Thank you so much. We need to also recognize part of some of the members of the audience here for them to actually make input. So let me yield the mic to Buki to recognize some of those that have requested to speak. Buki, over to you.
Thank you, Majid. Thank you, Auntie Yemi. I always find it difficult to call you just Yemi like that. I'm so Yoruba like that. Thank you to Omoyele Showore, Showore. I also find it difficult to just call you by your name. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to Ibrahim Salawu, Unilagolodo, who's also done a lot of work around education. I also want to just say thank you to some of the SUG presidents that tuned into this conversation. We invited a lot and they said they were going to come, but as Sheya said, a lot of them are on their way to Abuja. They're in flights, they're on the road, and they've told us they will join at some point ahead of their election or them electing a new NANS leader tomorrow. And like Homoyele Shore has told us, we are open to elect a credible leader with integrity that can speak on behalf of Nigerian students when need be. And that need always arises. Like we said, when I went to Unilorin, there was I think when I was going into Unilorin was when they had the last ASU strike before they joined this one. So at one point, even if you go to a university that is not part of ASU strike has happened to you. And I'm going to also yield into the audience, like we said. We want to hear from people. We want to hear solutions. We want to hear, even if it's frustration, from the audience. Is it ASU? Are the students not doing enough? The carnival of student union leaders we have right now, are they the people that are going to sort of knock this incessant strike to an end? As governments, do they care? When airline operators go on strike, they are quick to act. When electricity workers turn off the electricity engines, they are quick to act. But when it comes to ASU, they just don't care. It can go on for a year, it can go on for 2 years. They are less.
Buki, sorry, it's very hard to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
You're far away from the mic. Much better.
Much better. Yeah, so I said we're going to yield the mic to the audience. We are going to be hearing, is it frustrations from students, solutions from people? Does the government really care? When airline operators, when staff of electrical TCN, when they go on strike, the government is quick to act. But when it comes to ASU, they can go on strike for a year or two. They don't care about that. So far, everything else goes on. They are fine with that. So far, they can take planes out of this country. So far, their students are schooling, their own children are also schooling abroad and graduating at the right time. So I'm seeing somebody from Bayelsa State who is running for an office there. I thought that was pretty interesting. His Twitter handle is political. I doubt if I'm pronouncing this right, but you can take on the mic and just speak. Tell us where you are, what you are thinking. Should education be a political issue at the moment right now?
Good evening, everybody. I will not have the time to call people's name to thank them or talk, but let me just dive straight to the problem we are having now, which is education at ASU. The problem of education started when so-called professors, will rig elections for illiterates to occupy public offices. That is the major problem, because for you to be a professor and they ask you to go and monitor election, come back as a return officer, and you go there, you collect money and you rig election for someone that didn't go to school, and because you collected money and you come back. Obviously, the person will think that maybe this person is not serious. This person that I thought that was more intelligent than myself, if this person could do this kind of thing, that means they are not really serious. And the person goes ahead and appoint the VC, the chancellors, and the rest of them, the other board of members for universities. And then nothing can be done, because they've been appointed just like Yemi or Mrs. Yemi said, they are appointed because there's a saying, popular saying that he who pays the piper dictates the tune, and whatever they do is for them to remain in office. Because you can, there's something politicians normally do when they gain power, they want to remain in power till they die. And for you to remain in power, you have to make sure that your followers are always below you. And for your followers to be always below you, it means they have to be deformed. And for them to be deformed, that means education has to go down. And that is exactly what the Nigerian politicians are all about. They don't want you to know, because once you know, you be able to rebel them, you'll be able to speak out, which nobody wants. Just like the Nigerian students we are talking about today. They want to elect a president tomorrow and the other members of executive tomorrow. But I can tell you categorically that almost all of them contesting for those offices are graduates. They are not in any university in Nigeria. Most of them, they just graduate, they have done their masters, they have done their PhD. When you come to election time, they just go and they register for one school and say they are doing a program. They come with a certificate and say they are students and they contest. Just like the last one that they contested, that is currently the president, over 46 years old, and is a president of NANS. Just imagine what he did when he had meeting with the Minister of Education. He cannot even address the man. He's going to shout for the man. You have protested and they are giving you audience to talk to the minister, but you cannot provide a solution. You cannot present an argument which can be, people can hold and say, okay, this is a good argument. So the problem is a big one. We have to come from the VCs rigging election for politicians. Since they are facing the problems we are facing now, they have to think and say, okay, we have to do the right thing. Coming election, because this is a matter
so
of...
much. Thank you so much, sir. We sincerely appreciate you. Please, as you make your comments, we will not be able to take more than 2 minutes from you. Just 2 minutes maximum, because our guest speakers are still going to give their final thoughts, and there will be responses to questions. If you have opinion, make it. If you have a position, just 2 minutes. If you have question, please go straight to your question. You can introduce yourself better, please. Buki, can you recognize someone else?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Majid, for that. I'm going to call on. This person has been also asking for the mic for some time now. Ola Diamonds, the strategist. Please, 1 or 2 minutes. And I can see you are doing a lot about tech and leadership. You have the mic. Thank you. Mute.
Thank you very much. All protocols duly observed, and it's nice also having like worthy people on the platform. I'm Ola Diamonds, and for perspective, I was the former Senate president of Oberoi University several years ago. That was 2004. So it's good to have a discussion about ASUU, and it's good to talk about the way forward about ASUU. But there are very good context that we need to put in place about discussion about ASUU. It's so interesting when ASUU goes on strike and people are discussing about the lecturers in school finding a way to generate fund for the university. And that thing bothers me and it worries me, because it's like you telling doctors to go and look for a way to make money for the hospital. It's like you telling teachers to go and look for a way to make money for the school. It's like telling civil servants to find a way to run. These guys are not the one running the school. Every university has an administration, and the governing council for every university today is now appointed by the president of Nigeria. So we need to take that away from the conversation in the first place. So the first question we need to ask is that, does Nigeria have the required funding to fund education? That is the first question that we need to answer ourselves. And do we have enough money to fund the legislature? The answer is yes. We have never had a discussion about House of Assembly member, about House of Rep, about the Senate, which carries more than 24% of Nigerian budget today. So I've never heard of them going on strike because they are not being paid. Their securities are being paid. They themselves are being paid. They are getting their money as at Wendy. So you cannot come as a parent and say a particular child should go and fend for himself when other children are enjoying this money, right? So, and this mentality should be what every Nigerian should keep in mind. Don't talk about ASU. The question is that, is ASU demand, is it legitimate? The answer is yes, very legitimate. Should they be discussing about ASU, whether it should be a political discussion or not? Education is a chronic political discussion. The reason why we are talking today is because majority of Nigerians today are not even in school, so they cannot even think straight. They cannot even make a judgment. This is the reason why election will keep on being rigged as long as people right way.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ola Diamond. Nice having you here again after so much years of partying from Obafemi Awolowo University, where Idris Akinbadu was your secretary. Thank you so much, Ola Diamond. Thank you so much, Ola Diamond. So, Buki, do we have someone else? Just make your contribution to be very short and sharp, please, in 2 minutes maximum. Buki, are you still here? Okay. Oluwaseyale, just in 1 minute, please. Oluwaseyale, if you are not here, Owolabi, please go on. Just 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Mojid, and I want to use the opportunity to thank Mrs. Yemi and our speakers and all protocols duly observed. Please. I will just dive into what I want to say. I think it is high time we started asking questions from former executive of ASU. Because what I say is about agreement being reached, promise being made and not fulfilled. ASU strike did not begin last month. It has been for years. They will be meeting with government and they will be postponing things. They will go on strike, they will end the strike without being paid. What happened inside the room? What happened in where we don't even know? What happened when you call us strike behind the curtains? There are things that questions we need to ask. It's not every time we just go on the street and start questioning government. What happened to our leaders that we said they should go and represent us in the room? They are making the discussion with the government. Their children are there. Have we met with the children? Okay, we told your parent to represent us. And this is what we have at the end of the day. What happened? Can you help us talk to them? Can they be sincere with their offices? These are questions we need to ask. It's high time we started doing that. It is not every time we just say Buhari should do that, but no. Buhari sent representative. ASU also met with them. What happened in the room that everybody said, oh yeah, let us cancel strike, let everybody resume to work without being paid? There's something wrong somewhere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wolabi.
Thank you so much. I think that is the question that was asked at the University of Lagos when SANU leadership met with the SANU and NASU members. It was a question that should be asked by the lecturers themselves and the people who are concerned. The journalists do their home. Thank you so much. These are questions that are already being asked. We recognize that. In the next couple of minutes, we are going to go for final thoughts from our guest speakers. But more importantly, I have Turbo King. Turbo King, please, you have a minute.
Good evening, everybody. All protocol duly observed. When it comes to this ASU strike, I really want to ask a question. Initially I had Nigeria Labour Congress, they wanted joining ASU in these strike stuffs, And then when it comes to this ASU strike, you could see our politicians, their children are not in Nigerian universities, they are graduating outside. And then, that's why it's not even bothering them. That's why most of these our issues, most of these problems like
So
this.
what is the question?
No, the question I want to ask, can't the Nigeria Labour Congress join ASU and say, most of us now, most of our children, they are in Nigeria universities, can't they join ASU and say, if you don't end this strike, we're not going to, the airline is not going to hold all the civil servant, all the labor congress, all this association. We're not going to do anything till you guys meet ASUU's demand. You get? And then I think that's when the federal government would actually look into all these stuffs, because it's going to affect them. When there are so many things not really working in Nigeria, and the labor, in general joins in, you could see it's
Thank
going
you so much. I think we had that pledge from NLC. NLC president actually pledged that after their massive protest, there was a nationwide protest. And the following day, there was a kind of the bigger protest in Abuja at the FCT. We understand that they said they will monitor things and take action. If that is going to come to reality, we do not know yet. But we must continue to agitate for that. We are getting to the end of this conversation. We shouldn't be staying too long. This is almost 7:30. But before we go, finally, we thank everybody that has contributed. Your contributions will be collated. I know change.org does not just organize events like this. There must always be a kind of a follow-up. So before we go, Yemi, what's your final thought? Is she here?
Yes, I am. Sorry about that.
Thank
I just wanted to draw the parallel. I like the parallel, I forget who made it, saying that National Assembly members get paid. They don't protest. Well, staff of the National Assembly have protested in the past, but I get your point. But I think the parallel for me is saying that government is supposed to provide water, and we keep protesting so if you live in Lagos, for example, you keep protesting to Sanwo-Olu that you have not provided us water, you must provide us water. No, what do? We dig a borehole. You're supposed to pick up my waste. You don't pick it up. We protest a little bit, but we also make provision. The point is, and while I understand, but I think in federal government continuing to set up universities that it cannot afford, tells us what we need to know. So the universities are owned by the university. So if the government continues to do that to our own detriment, what are we doing for ourselves? Is my point around one, making it a very clear election issue. So because until politicians know that there is a cost to their actions, they'll continue to do it because they can get away with it. One, make it an election issue. And two, ask to own the universities. Let the intellectuals decide how they want to do it. It's not a matter of going to look for money to fund. It's not a private, we're taking it from the government owning it and controlling it to what the universities themselves can control, and then engage government from that perspective and get money at whatever structure that allows them to fund the universities on their own terms. I rest. And then, but more importantly, but for everyone beyond this conversation particularly, but for everyone else, as we go into elections and we start engaging and we start talking, let's continue to make, and not just education, police reform, healthcare, all the major issues. Health reform. Let's make these issues election issues, because until there's a cost to them keeping their office, especially members of the National Assembly, then there's really no reason for them to pay attention. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Now we are putting before Omoyele Sowore, who we know is a presidential candidate of a party. And while I will be happy to have him at the villa, because I know that I can easily knock on the door and the door will be open and we can challenge him to say, this is what we have done. So Omoyele Sowore, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts.
My big brother, publisher, we can't hear you, sir. Since the network is not friendly. Can you speak now?
Strike will end, students are ready to end it. So I put it back on that.
Network seems unfriendly to the presidential candidate of AAC. Omoyele Sowore, we can't hear you. We understand very well. We have put the task before you. that one of the major agenda before you is how to fix education if you eventually emerge as the president of Nigeria. But more importantly, let me go back to our host for today. Buki, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I'm here.
Let's wrap up and give a vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Majid. If Shawara can hear us, you can always come back at some point. I wanted to hand the mic over to Wale Ajiboye of Change.org and also Yomi of EduPlanner, who have used their platform to convene this meeting. Last words from them. Wale Ajiboye, can you hear us? You can unmute your mic and give us some your thoughts on some of the issues that have been discussed today. Yomi, please also prepare. We'll be going to you also. And if Yomi, I think you're already a speaker. Yomi, you can go and we'll come to Wale. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Buki, very much for the platform. I think my final thought is how much we prioritize our different issues facing us as a nation will determine how much politicians will take them seriously. When we talk about insecurity, we've talked about airlines shutting down tonight, and the government has moved swiftly to address them. So also when we take education seriously, I believe government, politicians, they will take it very seriously. So beyond ASUU strike, I imagine a near time where citizens are even taking education issues more serious than ASUU themselves. And ASUU will not even have to fight for their demands a lot of the time, but government and citizens having to dwell it out on their priorities as a nation. So for us all here, I think one of my final thoughts is for us to take issues that concern education more seriously, and then we can have a better future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Yomi, for that call to action. Wale, over to you. Wale,
I'm not sure Wale is on this call. I'm not sure Wale is still on this call.
He's on this call. He's going to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you,
Okay.
Wale. Please go on.
I think it's just to say, it's to express gratitude to all the conversation and see what we can take forward from here. And how do we, well, there's a lot that's come out from here. And then there's a lot that we need to think about. And a lot of the things that I've heard today, some of the things that we've also been thinking about. I think what would be very interesting is how do we also start to engage also with ASUU? Because I recall some of the conversation that Yemi mentioned about the best of our mind, the best people that are meant to be custodian of knowledge can resolve this. That there's a big problem, because we already know that the issue with the government is still there. But should we then punish the future of this country and leave it to the the inconsistencies or some of the challenges that we have seen with some of our leaders? So I would say that how do we take this forward is what I'm thinking about, and I'm hoping that we can begin to use our different platforms to engage. But it'd be good to have a follow-on conversation where we can actually engage with the ASUU as well and see what else can we do, because we can't continue this way. And this country is so blessed with talent and incredible individuals that we now need to, support our young people. And it's time for us to do it, because the world is waiting. And there's an opportunity for us now to solve this issue once and for all. And I'm hoping that with the kind of collaboration and the conversation we're hearing today, we can move forward from here. But thank you so much. It's been such a privilege just listening through today. Thank you.
Thank you, Wale. As a closing call to action here, I just want to say thank you to all the speakers that waited till the end. All our speakers have been here. I also want to say thank you to the student union leaders. Despite being on the road to Abuja, they took time to join us. They've heard our feedback. Yele Sowore has said this strike will end when the students want it to end. And I'm going to end this Twitter conversation on that note. Students that are on this platform, the student union leaders that are going to meet, over to you. You feel this even more than anybody else, more than ASUU, more than the federal government, more than the public. Students are the ones sitting at home, not knowing what next. And we're saying, what do you want to do? We will be meeting again at some point as the conversation goes on. Our hope is that ASU calls this strike, and our hope is that the government does the needful. Thank you so much to all our speakers. Thank you to the audience. We apologize if we could not take all your questions. I see Chidi is still raising up his hand and people are on the queue. We have to wrap this up because we don't want people to spend too much time here. And some of the message we wanted that needs to be passed across has been passed across. We will convene again. And also, please, change.org is doing a lot around education. We have petitions that we are hoping to deliver to the National Assembly. We have petition starters that are also running their campaigns. One of them is EduPlanner, that has also joined us to collaborate on these Twitter spaces. Please follow their work. Also follow what change.org is doing around education and some other issues. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Thank you so
Also,
much.
thank you to my co-moderator, Majid. You've done an
Thank
excellent
you.
job. All right, good night, everyone.
Madam Yemi, thank you so much for always coming around. We sincerely appreciate you and the good work you are doing.
Madam
Great.
Yemi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, thanks so
Majid.
much. Thank you so much, sir. Grateful.
Thank you, Buki. Thank you, Wally. It's nice meeting all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Is this recorded?